What if you could step through a door into eternal bliss? Every desire stilled, every question answered, all longing erased. Or swing open another door into a realm where agony never ceases, relief is outlawed, and hope is outlawed. Which would you choose? The instant answer seems obvious. Take the heaven door always. Yet, as soon as you cross its threshold, you discover something startling. Perfection annihilates desire. Without contrast, no shadow, no hunger, no suspense. You dissolve into the white noise of infinite pleasure. On the other door's side, infinite pain flattens all narrative. Time stretches into tedium, and the self withers under unrelieved torture. Imagine a tiny chemical courier, dopamine, leaping from neuron to neuron, in a pathway called the mesolimbic circuit. It's the spark that tells you chocolate tastes good, that your lover's smile is worth chasing, that a solved math problem glows brighter than an unsolved one. But dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about prediction, anticipation, the urge to learn. When Pavlov rang his bell, salivating dogs weren't merely tasting food, they were learning a pattern, a promise of reward. And when a gambler presses spin, yet again, it's that same circuit whispering, just one more time. In evolutionary terms, this reward system was literally the engine of survival. It coaxed early humans out of caves in pursuit of game. It bound parents to infants. It wove tribes together through shared ritual euphoria. Pleasure proved itself a more reliable teacher than fear. We repeat what feels good, and so we learn where to find food, safety, love. But that very power to reinforce can entrap us. In the 21st century, screens, dopamine-dripping notifications, designer drugs, convenience foods, and hyper-stimulating pornographic stimuli have hijacked our mesolimbic highways. We chase ever greater peaks of pleasure, and yet, paradoxically, we feel more numb, more anxious, more starved for meaning. In the next section, we'll explore the other side of the brain's coin, how pain, fear, and threat detection stoke the fires of avoidance, shaping behavior in ways as profound, if less celebrated, as dopamine's siren call. Every nerve ending in your body is a sentinel. Turn to the whispers of danger. While dopamine drives you toward reward, another network springs into action at the hint of threat. This system, anchored by the amygdala and fueled by stress hormones, exists to keep you alive by teaching you to avoid harm. Just as pleasure compels approach, pain and fear compel withdrawal. Together, they forge the dual imperatives that steer nearly every choice you make. When the amygdala sounds its alarm, it recruits an array of neurochemicals designed to prime your body for escape or defense. Noradrenaline, cortisol, endorphins, adrenaline. Together, these chemicals orchestrate what we call the fight-or-flight response. In small doses, fear and pain avoidance keep us safe. They steer us away from open flames, unstable relationships, and toxic behaviors. But when these systems dominate, life becomes a series of retreats. You may excel at sidestepping risk, yet miss out on growth opportunities that require vulnerability. Falling in love, launching a creative project, or standing up for your truth. Our modern environments, filled with intangible stressors, constant connectivity, unrelenting news cycles, social comparison, trains the threat system to perceive danger everywhere. We become conditioned to anticipate pain in everyday interactions, rarely allowing ourselves the freedom to explore uncertainty without bracing for impact. With both the pursuit of pleasure and the urge to escape pain hardwired into our brains, we navigate life at the intersection of two powerful currents. Each command carries evolutionary wisdom, but also the potential for imbalance. In the next chapter, we'll bring these currents into direct tension by opening the two doors of eternal pleasure or unrelenting suffering. An exercise that reveals why neither absolute attraction nor absolute avoidance can sustain the self. Every moment of our waking life reflects a negotiation between two imperatives: to chase pleasure and to evade pain. From the smallest impulse to the grandest life decision. These twin forces shape our behavior, our values, and ultimately our sense of self. We scroll social feeds for the next hit of dopamine and swipe left on discomfort in relationships. Yet this binary choreography often unfolds beneath conscious awareness, guiding us into patterns as predictable as they are powerful. Imagine standing before two doors. Behind door A lies an eternal state of perfect pleasure and resolution. No ache, no sorrow, no unfulfilled desire. Every question answered, every longing stilled. Heaven in its purest form, brimming with bliss. Behind door B lies an unending realm of suffering, physical pain and emotional anguish, stretched into infinity. No relief, no respite, no hope. Every moment a fresh crucible of torment. Hell in its most uncompromised expression. On the surface, the choice seems trivial. Who in their right mind would step into perpetual agony? Yet, if you pause long enough to consider the nuances, each door carries a hidden paradox. At first glance, door A is a culmination of every pleasure-seeking drive you've ever known. No more hunger, no more longing, no more anxiety about the future. You bathe in perpetual contentment. But perfection is static. It places all desires at rest, sealing the flow of tension that gives experience its shape. Without craving, there is no pursuit. Without pursuit, there is no self. Your consciousness merges into a continuous stream of uniform delight, yet paradoxically, uniformity ebbs meaning. When every moment feels identical, how do you distinguish you from the backdrop of bliss? Behind door A lies the consummation of every pleasure-seeking impulse you've ever known. Imagine stepping into a luminous realm where every physiological urge dissolves on contact. Hunger never stirs your stomach, thirst never chafes your throat. Every taste carries the peak of indulgence without diminishing returns. No shadow of worry, no whisper of doubt, no throb of unfulfilled longing. In this perfect sanctuary, relationships radiate unconditional warmth. Every conversation is with empathy, every embrace glows with mutual understanding. Time itself slows, stretching each moment into an eternity of contentment. There is no tomorrow to fear, no yesterday to regret, only the ceaseless now of rapturous harmony. Yet this domain is not merely sensory, it extends to the mind and spirit. Every question you ever asked, why am I here? What happens after death? Finds immediate, crystal clear answers. Questions evaporate as knowledge floods your awareness. Certainty becomes the backdrop of experience, locking you into a perpetual state of intellectual and emotional repose. At first blush, eternal pleasure seems the ultimate prize. But the hedonic treadmill teaches a crucial lesson. The pursuit of happiness is an escalator that speeds up underfoot. We adapt to positive changes so swiftly that yesterday's marvel becomes today's baseline. A promotion brings a burst of joy that fades within weeks. A new relationship shines at first, then settles into routine. Now imagine that treadmill doesn't stop. You adapt to each wave of bliss until you no longer perceive differences in intensity. A sunset's brilliance, once breathtaking, merges into the endless glow of heaven's light. Taste, sensation, emotion, each flattens into an unvarying plane of delight. Without novelty or contrast, your perceptual apparatus atrophies, sensitivity dulls, leaving behind a monochrome of equanimity mistaken for perpetual bliss. This terminus of the hedonic treadmill is a paradoxical crucible. Infinitely rising pleasure becomes indistinguishable from static plateau. When everything is equally delightful, nothing truly delights. The peaks that once guided your path dissolve into a plane that offers no beacon, no direction, no spark. Desire is the engine of selfhood. It impels you forward, drawing distinctions between what is and what could be. You know, I am hungry because you recall moments of satiety. You know, I am bored because you contrast it with engagement. Desire, in its relentlessness, sketches the outlines of the I in relation to the world. Perfection extinguishes desire. When every longing is satisfied instantly, the vector of craving vanishes. Without a future to chase, your consciousness drifts in a homogeneous sea of stilled needs. The dynamic interplay of tension and release, the very drama that scripts your personal narrative, collapses into stasis. Differentiation dissolves alongside desire. In our ordinary lives, we recognize self through difference. The sun feels warm against the chill of night. Laughter tastes sweet besides the salt of tears. Perfection flattens these contrasts. Warmth, coolness, pleasure, pain, they fold into a single continuum of undifferentiated experience. The borders that once defined what happens to me and who I am blur into oblivion. This dissolution is not liberating. Instead, it annihilates the self by erasing the conditions for selfhood. No horizon remains to pursue. No memory of lack persists, to contrast with surplus. You become a single note held forever. A resonance without melody. To grasp the paradox of perfection, we turn to philosophical traditions that confront the limit of ultimate states. Platonic forms. For Plato, the form of the good represents the highest reality, a perfect archetype behind every changeable phenomena. Contemplating this form elevates the soul beyond the material flux. Yet Plato also warns that dwelling solely on the eternal forms withdraws you from the embodied world of becoming. The philosopher who ascends too far above human ties becomes, in effect, disengaged from life's vital interplay. Nietzsche's Übermensch. Nietzsche's Übermensch transcends conventional morality and creates new values. This figure embraces life's upheavals without seeking an end to struggle. Overcoming is a process, not a destination. The Übermensch is defined by active will, not by arrival at perfected state. Nietzsche critiques ascetic ideals of perfection because they deny life's inherent dynamism and tragic dimensions. These philosophical anchors converge on a crucial insight. Any doctrine promising an unchanging pinnacle, whether through extinguishing desire, apprehending an eternal good, or reaching a moral summit, risk undermining the very conditions for a living self. They challenge us to reimagine fulfillment not as terminal bliss, but as an ongoing engagement with life's tensions. Door A offers a seduction. Step inside, and every want dissolves into infinite satisfaction. Yet, in that eradication of want, the self evaporates. Perfection, when stripped of process, becomes a mirror reflecting nothing but itself. In the next chapter, we will swing open door B to confront unending suffering and then return to shatter both doors simultaneously, revealing how their collision reignites a self that thrives in the dance of opposites. Door B's agony is undeniable. A crucible without end. Every nerve screams. Every thought chafes against unimaginable pain. In that ceaseless suffering, your self dissolves in a different way. When there is no contrast between suffering and relief, pain flattens time and identity. Every moment replicates the last, erasing progress, narrative, and hope. The self becomes an echo trapped in an endless chamber of anguish. Your body is locked in a relentless cycle of pain, like an open wound that refuses to clot. There is no respite, no analgesic balm, no intervals of calm. Sustained exposure to extreme pain triggers neurological adaptations akin to those seen in addiction, but twisted into a negative spiral. Nociceptors, pain receptors sensitize, sending ever-strong alarms to the brain. The body ramps up stress hormones, like cortisol and adrenaline, in an ongoing fight-or-flight posture. Yet there is nothing to flee. This chronic mobilization exhausts the system, eroding physical resilience and cognitive clarity. Adaptation sets in, but it brings no relief. It only dulls the edge of agony to reveal the broader plateau of suffering. You cease to feel the sharpest stabs of pain, only the dull, grinding ache that never lifts. In ordinary hardship, relief momentarily interrupts the cycle, offering hope and contrast. Here, that break never comes, and hope itself withers in the absence of any conceivable end. Time in this realm ceases to be a river flowing towards a future. It becomes a stagnant pool. Past, present, and future merge into a single, undifferentiated now of suffering. Without temporal landmarks, no sunrise to mark a new day, no grace of sunrise after sunset, your internal narrative unravels. The self, which normally relies on memory and anticipation to sustain identity, loses its moorings. You no longer recall who you were before the pain began, nor can you imagine a self beyond it. Nothing sustains the self in a realm of unending agony. When pain never pauses, the very contrast that gives experience substance disappears. With both door A and B explored in isolation, we stand on the brink of a deeper synthesis. Both doors reveal a startling truth. Neither perpetual pleasure nor unrelieving pain can sustain a distinct self. The self emerges through difference between pleasure and pain, longing and fulfillment, tension and release. When one pole becomes infinite, the very conditions that allow I to exist vanish. This thought experiment forces us to confront the limits of our neural commands. The dopamine-lit path promises ecstasy, but risks erasing the seeker. The cortisol-soaked roads demand escape, but risk annihilating the escaper. Each command, taken to its terminus, undermines the self it was designed to protect. Stepping back from the experiment, we see that life's true terrain lies between the two extremes. We are not meant to inhabit absolute pleasure or absolute pain, but to navigate the dynamic interplay of both. In the next chapter, we will fling both doors open at once, allowing heaven's perfection and hell's despair to converge, and discover how that combustive fusion reignites the cell's vitality and meaning. Imagine tearing down the walls that separate heaven and hell, stepping into a crucible where unmitigated pleasure and unrelenting suffering fuse into a single fiery field. In that moment, your neural reward and avoidance circuits ignite simultaneously. Dopamine floods your brain even as cortisol floods your bloodstream. You feel ecstasy in one breath and terror in the next, joy and pain alternating or even coalescing in a single shattering instant. This daring experiment defies our instinct to categorize experience as good or bad. Instead, it invites a radical acceptance of life's full spectrum. The volatile mixture refuses to settle into either pure bliss or pure agony. Instead, it births a third substance, a vibrant nexus of tension and resolution, of ascent and descent, forever in movement. This alchemical third transcends the limitation of both poles. It is not the absence of pain or the absence of desire, but a dynamic field where each enhances the other. Pleasure acquires its brilliance because it contrasts with suffering. Suffering, in turn, becomes luminous because it pulses with the possibility of relief and delight. When you hold heaven and hell together, desire reignites. The very possibility of shifting polarity, of moving from agony to bliss, or from bliss to agony, creates a dramatic arc. You crave not only pleasure, but the dance itself, the dramatic swings of life's pendulum. Desire no longer seeks a static endpoint. It seeks the living process of transformation. This restored hunger for experience reanimates narratives. Your life unfolds as a story of oscillation, moments of contraction and expansion, of descent and ascent, of conflict and resolution. In the symbolic language of myth, you become both hero and anti-hero, descending into the underworld only to merge with the elixir of heightened awareness. The arcs of your personal narratives reclaim their power, because each twist and turn matters against the backdrop of extreme contrast. In practical terms, embracing paradox can revitalize creativity, relationships, and newfound potency when you refuse to filter out the negative or cling exclusively to the positive. Paradox invites you to savor the tension. It becomes the crucible in which your deepest wants and fears transmute into meaningful action. At the heart of this alchemical fusion lies the process Jung called individuation. Individuation is not self-improvement, nor a march toward perfection. It is the sacred marriage of opposites within the soul. The anima and animus find balance. Conscious and unconscious form a dialogue. Light and shadow weave a single tapestry. Through this marriage, the self emerges as a novel center of unity, no longer split between plea and aversion, but rooted in wholeness. You become a vessel for the full spectrum, a living arc that carries both flood and fire. In this state, authenticity blooms. You speak your truth without censoring for comfort. You embrace vulnerability without succumbing to fear, and you pursue growth without denying difficulty. By flinging open both doors, heaven and hell, you alchemize the raw materials of experience into a vibrant selfhood. Pleasure and pain cease to be adversaries. They become dance partners in the eternal choreography of life. In that dance, every step, no matter how fierce or tender, affirms the I that moves through time, shift, and paradox. In the next chapter, We'll explore how the alchemical wholeness transcends perfection and leads us to a vision of completeness, the dynamic equilibrium where life's polarities breathe together in ongoing creation. At the culmination of our experiment, we confront a pivotal shift, moving beyond the static ideal of perfection into a living process called completeness. Completeness is not an end state, but an ever-evolving balance of opposites. It embraces the full palette of human experience, desire and aversion, ecstasy and agony, certainty and doubt, without subordinating any part to an absolute. Completeness acknowledges that life's meaning is woven through contrast and movement. In perfection, all tension vanishes. In completeness, tension becomes the texture. You don't seek to erase suffering or to cage pleasure indefinitely. Instead, you cultivate a capacity to emerge with both fully, recognizing each as indispensable to growth. The self that emerges is not a perfected statue, but a living mosaic, its beauty enriched by every crack and fragment. We began by peering into the twin engines of our brain, the mesolimbic reward pathway urging us towards pleasure, and the amygdala-driven avoidance system steering us clear of pain. In evolution, these neural circuits safeguard our survival, taught us to learn, and knit our social bonds. Yet, when taken to extremes, endless ecstasy or unending agony both reveal a fatal flaw. They erase the very self they were meant to sustain. Our thought experiment of two doors exposed this paradox. Door A ushered us into a static paradise where every craving is quenched and every question answered, only to collapse into a timeless plane of indistinguishable delight. Door B plunged us into relentless suffering, dissolving time, narrative, and identity in an endless crucible of despair. Each isolated extreme annihilated the conditions for selfhood. The alchemy of wholeness emerged when we flung both doors open together. By inviting heaven and hell to converge, we ignite a dynamic third realm, an ecstatic terror, a painful grace, a grieving gratitude. In that charged space, pleasure and pain no longer warred. They collaborated, producing sharp contrast that reinvigorated desire and narrative. We lived Jung's dialectic, terror and ecstasy, grief and gratitude, shadow and light, forming a dance that awoke the individuated self. Moving beyond perfection and completeness reframes our relationship with life's polarities. Completeness is not the end of desire, but its most fertile ground. It is not the absence of suffering, but the capacity to transmute it into insight. It is not a static summit, but an ever-expanding horizon. Ultimately, the journey we've taken reveals a simple yet profound truth. Life calls not for perfection, but for completeness. The self is not a prize to be won or a fortress to be protected. It is a living process, an alchemical vessel, forged in the fires of opposing forces. When we embrace the full spectrum, when we allow heaven's light and hell's shadow to co-author our story, we discover that meaning is born in the tension between. I am what I am becomes more than a declaration, it becomes a dance in which every step, whether jubilant or anguished, contributes to the unfolding tapestry of our being. In that dance, we find purpose, not in escaping pain or clinching pleasure, but in moving with the currents of life, ever renewed by the dynamic interplay that defines our existence.